unfortunately, the way the battery industry is structured is it heavily favors automotive because flat pack batteries are easy to design, easy to deliver, and every automotive company is more or less using the same design. So they get volume discount pricing. You show up as an ag company and you're like, hey, I got 4 tractors. I need 4 different designs for these battery packages, right? I've got different voltage requirements. Can I get it for the same price? And they kind of laugh at you. Oh, how many are you doing? Oh, only a couple thousand? No way, right?
One, two, three. Coming up on episode 340 of The Modern Acre, we're talking to Marc Kermisch, the Global Chief Digital and Information Officer of CNH Industrial. We're talking autonomy, we're talking robotics, AI, alternative fuels, and investments. We got a lot to dig into.
The Modern Acre podcast explores the latest in business, investing, technology, and sustainability in agriculture, and we're your hosts, Tyler and Tim Nuss. If you'd like to dig deeper with The Modern Acre, be sure to check out our membership community, The Modern Acre Co-op. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Pinion. In today's challenging ag environment, the success of a farm rises and falls based on making sound decisions. Pinion advisors recommend evaluating your farm data regularly to maximize profits and identify threats to your bottom line. If you don't have time or resources, Pinion can help. Farmers have entrusted Pinion with their businesses for 90 years. From ag-focused tax and accounting strategy, legacy planning, and FSA program guidance, to business management, land advisory, sustainability, and more. Explore your options at pinionglobal.com.
Ty, it's finally here. We're at World Agritech today.
Yeah, this is one of those crazy things where right now I'm not there as I'm speaking, but as I'm listening to this, as people are listening to this, I'm at World Agritech. This is podcasting time travel.
Yeah, if you guys are at the show, definitely try to bump into us. Ty and I are going to be walking around, so come say hi.
Tim is the more approachable brother, I would say.
For sure.
You just got that like farmer vibe, you know, the Red Wings. Are you going to be wearing the farm hat? You just got that blue collar vibe about you, Tim.
Yeah, you already give me a commentary on my dress code for what to wear, because typically when you go to these shows, you're like, Tim, what are you wearing? I'm like, I'm trying to go more casual, jeans, boots, and you're always trying to step it up a notch and go like pullover, button down. You're always keeping a little classy, Ty.
Got to keep it classy. Yeah. But no, we're super excited to attend. It's going to be chaos, Tim. I'm going to wake up at like 4 a.m., fly up there, and I'm just going to be running on adrenaline and cold brew. And we have a ton of meetings planned, but we also want to, see a ton of the show. So I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I am excited nonetheless.
Ty, we have an awesome episode for the week of Agritech, talking to Marc Kermisch, who's the Global Chief Digital and Information Officer of CNH Industrial. CNH is a massive company. You probably know a lot of their brands. It's Case, New Holland. They have a lot of subsidiary companies that are really recognizable in the ag space. They're probably number 2 in the space behind John Deere. So they're just a massive company. And Marc's role is really interesting, looking at all the investments they're making on the innovation side of the house. So looking at things like autonomy within agriculture, robotics, AI, also talking about kind of their investment and M&A strategy. A lot of that happening in the space. So it was really cool to check in with Marc.
Yeah, we hit on all the fun stuff. You guys are going to love this, especially from the perspective of a large agribusiness incumbent, about how they're thinking about the future of agriculture, innovation in agriculture. So you're going to love this. It's perfect to listen to on your way to or from World Agritech. You guys are going to love it. Let's jump in with what's top of mind for Marc.
For me, top of mind is spring planting, right? We're just getting ready here. In some cases, the farmers are already out in their fields putting seed in the ground. And spring planting for us is a busy time. We are trying to ensure that our computer systems that run our cloud and mobile applications are fully up and running. We tend to process terabytes of data a day as seeds are going in the ground, and our farmers want to see what's going on. And then also out in the field, making sure that our latest release, which typically happens in the December, January timeframe, is working bug-free. And we want to make sure there's zero downtime out there for the farmers.
Yeah, it's a common theme on the podcast, the seasonality of farming, depending on what month you're in. That's what you're focused about, planting being a big piece. And the last thing you want during planting is a glitch in the software. So I'm sure that's keeping you up at night. Well, Marc, we're excited to jump in here and talk about CNH and all the work that you're doing there. But before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you into agriculture.
Yeah, so this is my third stint in agriculture. My first time was in commodities trading, building commodity software for traders. My second time was totally different in the safety workwear space, working for Red Wing Shoes and providing the boots that the farmers like to get all muddy in their fields. And now with CNH. But I came out of college in 1996, right into the dot-com boom, the very first internet bubble, and kind of cut my teeth in startups. And I've been working in and out of technology in a variety of industries to date. And now I'm here applying my trade at CNH, trying to make sure our customers can be successful every day.
So Marc, CNH, it's one of the big players in the ag industry, right? Give us the lay of the land. I think people hear CNH, you got different divisions, you're focused on different areas. Can you kind of set the stage of who CNH is, scale, and the different areas you operate in?
Sure. So CNH, we operate in 190 countries. We've got 38,000 employees. We focus in two core industries, agriculture and construction. In ag, we have really two premier brands. One is Case IH, which is a melding of Case and International Harvester. 180 years of history between those two companies. And New Holland, which has got a rich history all the way back to when Ford was making tractors. Very popular in Europe and in the Canadian region for us, as well as kind of the eastern United States with a background in hay and forage. On the construction side, we operate with Case Construction and New Holland Construction. And so everything from heavy excavators to bulldozers and road graders to skid loaders and wheel loaders. All the things you need to move dirt, right, on either side of it, so to speak. In a lot of cases, especially in your Central North America, Brazil, and Australia, we have both integrated implements and vehicles. And then my main job is applying all of the software that needs to bring those vehicles together and really enable what you now call precision farming.
Marc, excited to jump into how you're thinking about autonomy and AI and all the fun stuff, your investment strategy. But before we do, maybe talk a little bit about your role and what it plays kind of connecting all of these different departments.
So I try to describe my job to my 18-year-old daughter is that if there's software in the company that's being written, it's written by my teams. Of course, she pulls out her phone and is like, hey, like software on the phone, Dad, is that what you mean? And I'm like, yes, we have an app. We have a farm management system that our farmers can get into. But it goes beyond that, right? It's everything from the HVAC and infotainment in the cabs to the machine control to the implement management, all the way down to our dealer portals that help them order parts, manage warranty claims, to all the back office services that make a company run. And so if there's a piece of software, that's really where my teams focus and manage to make sure that we're able to serve our customers every day.
Marc, I want to dig into this whole conversation of buy versus build, right? You're a large company trying to continue to innovate and be ahead of where the industry is moving, where technology is moving. In your role, and company-wide, how do you guys think about, making acquisitions in the ag tech space? There's, been a lot of focus and attention in this area over the past decade. Like, how do you think about the acquisitions you've made and your decision criteria there versus building it internally?
I would say first and foremost is probably speed to market when we think about do you buy or build something. In the case of Raven, they were the preeminent crop protection company out there in the marketplace. They had hundreds of engineers focused on this problem with decades of experience. They had a strong dealer network. They focused on all makes, right? So it gave us kind of a nice entry into that space. And they'd been working with CNH for a long time, so we knew each other. And for us at the time of the company, we really wanted to bring in-house our management of our tech stack. That really meant us to, having to move in from an acquisition standpoint as a major jumping off point for CNH. And then from there, we took a look, we take a look at it from a standpoint of what's interesting intellectual property that's out there. And so if you look at Augmenta as another example, Augmenta was a startup out of Greece that was really focused on, the sensing and apply space. So it's able to identify the chlorophyll content within a weed and determine what the treatment might need to be. It also can do that within the crop in and of itself. And so if you're applying fertilizer, it'll kind of help you determine how much fertilizer to apply. And as you guys know, this space in crop protection is fast moving, and it's really expensive to get into in regards to being able to classify both crop and weed worldwide. And so Augmenta is a chance for us to kind of jumpstart right into that with some super smart engineers that had working product, paying customers. And so it was beyond a proof of concept that we could then lean into and essentially add the resources and breadth and distribution of CNH to really give them some super fuel to get moving. In other cases, when we look at our core tech stack, right, which is the base software that runs machine control and precision, that's something we're going to build. You can't go out and buy that. And so using the engineers that have come through our acquisitions, and we've hired over 1,000 engineers in the last 2 years, we're now really focused on improving and extending our core tech stack to ensure that it is meeting the needs of our customers every day.
Yeah, I think this is something that's generally missed by folks. If we look at like the auto industry, right? People think about the assembly of a vehicle. You had mentioned like a lot of that was previously outsourced, and with the rise of technology, it's kind of changed the game. And I think that's one thing that people miss about a company like Tesla. Tesla innovated not only like a cool EV that's fast, but on the actual design and product development of a vehicle and developing that whole tech stack. And I think it's just really interesting that's why I think Tesla, is even valued a certain way, right? Is that they're not a assembler, but they're kind of doing the vertical integration of everything. And I think you guys are going through something similar of, originally equipment provider, but with the rise of technology, there is this criticality to own and develop your end-to-end tech stack. And I think that's not something that people like automatically get of like, why are companies like this investing so much in all these different areas? Because it's almost fundamentally different than it was 50 years ago.
You're 100% right. And then, Tesla really set the tone for what I'll call software-defined vehicle architecture. And there's a great TikTok, if you haven't seen it, of the Ford CEO describing the 270 vendors that he has to manage with his teams to deliver the software experience inside of a Ford car. And most of that software is black boxed. So if you have a defect and you're trying to chase that down, you have all these, from BSP packages to firmware to an inability to update over the air. It gets super complex. And yet, as you guys know, as farmers, when you're in the middle of the field and if you get a green screen of death, the last thing you want to do is have to go find a USB stick to restart your tractor. And so for us, that is exactly why we are insourcing and building and vertically integrating our tech stack. And we kind of refer to ourselves as a company that made great iron, and we're now merging great tech with great iron. And even internally, it's how you bring, a guy who designed tractors for a living and was used to bending steel to now start thinking about the software, the wiring harnesses, the CAN buses, the universal controllers, the engine control module, the GPS receiver, the antenna, right? What can and can't touch, iron and metal to ensure you have strength and connectivity. It's a totally different game these days. And bringing that cultural change to a 180 plus year old company is challenging enough. But at the end of the day, the farmer's best point of reference is their phone, right? And that's what they expect for reliability, that it's just always on and always what works. And Apple set that tone for all consumers. And that's the same bar we have to meet.
Marc, I want to dig into electrification a little bit. There seems to be a huge push towards kind of EVs and consumer vehicles, and also now in the agricultural space, we've seen a huge push in this direction. You've made investments into Monarch, which has an electric vineyard tractor. You also have the New Holland T4. So maybe just talk about like your approach to starting to get tractors in the field. Like from what we've seen as a farmer ourselves, like some of the offerings just like aren't high enough horsepower to kind of like replace the current fleet of tractors that we have, and like we don't have the grid to support a lot of that infrastructure. Maybe talk about like the rollout in your mind.
I think about electrification, like one of the biggest challenges we have as an equipment manufacturer is the weight of the vehicle on the ground and the compaction that it creates on the farm. And, when you have the current battery tech that's available in the marketplace today, that becomes really prohibitive for large vehicles, right? 400 horsepower, combines, large sprayers to be fully electric. And so when we took a look at the marketplace and we looked at our customers who are asking for electrification, they kind of fell into three categories. Category one was orchard vineyard, high value crop that has a discerning consumer who cares about what's going on in that vineyard, that wanted guarantees that they had sustainable wine on their table. The second were municipalities that are getting a lot of pressure to drive towards green capabilities. And they use these tractors from everything from mowing to hauling to light landscaping work. And lastly is kind of the Tesla model. There's a lot of hobby farmers out there that probably have a Tesla Rivian in their driveway, and they want to have an electric tractor to go with it. And they've already brought power to the home. And so we looked at scenarios where the tractor itself was nearby power at all times. And so most orchards are pretty condensed and confined. Municipalities are working in urban environments for the most part, and that hobby farmers got power to the farm. And so that's why we came up with the electric T4E and the 75E Farmall on the case side, which provides a 75 horsepower equivalent battery electric vehicle with high charging capabilities. So you can get up to a full day's work on a charge with a lunch break, right? So I can get an 80% recharge after an hour, and I can get 4 solid hours of continuous work. And what's also interesting about most of these vehicles is they don't work continuously. They kind of start and stop throughout their day. And so that 4-hour charge probably gets you 6 hours. And if you take a lunch break and you recharge it, you can get a full 8 to 10 hour day on the vehicle. And we kind of look at electrification in 3 spots. Maybe I'll say it. We look at alternative powertrains in 3 spots, right? Electrification on sub 100 horsepower vehicles, hybrid electric above 100 horsepower. And that could go all the way up to a large combine, especially if there's scenarios where I can start replacing hydraulics with electric motors. And then finally, you start to really bleed into alternative fuels. And so if you still need, the 18-hour day of a combine, we can start to get towards zero-based emissions by using alternative fuels.
I think that, your point is a really good one about weight, right? Like it's a big challenge of my Rivian is like classifies as a commercial vehicle because of its weight class. So I have to pay more in registration, which is annoying, but it's a super heavy vehicle, super powerful. And so when you think about like getting on farm, you have these pros and cons of just like the weight. And I think that's a hugely critical one. And I'm curious if there's going to be an evolution of just battery technology to make that a little bit more viable. I think one thing I've always thought of when thinking about electrification on farm is like, again, using my Rivian as an example, it's really built to be fully enclosed, right? So, when I'm out on the farm, all of the dirt, the conditions, right? Being able to have a vehicle where it's like fully reinforced underbody, fully steel, that you're not getting as much dirt coming into the vehicle seems like it could be a huge win for tractors, right? And execution, because I think half the time on the farm, it's like, a tractor's broken down and there's dirt in, you got to fix it. And so I think that could be a huge advantage. But then, you have this weight challenge as well. And then the last thing I would add is just accessible power, right? Because, can act as a battery generator. That's like another huge advantage. I think, you mentioned the hobbyist farms, I think makes a lot of sense.
I think you bring up a really good point. And, battery technology is changing quickly. And certainly if we get to sodium-based, steady-state, solid-state batteries, it could be a game changer, not only for ag, but for the whole battery electric industry. But one of the things that, there's 2 things that were really interesting challenges, right? When you look at the automotive, they created the skateboard concept of battery and chassis kind of coming together as one. The challenge with a tractor is the torsion that happens within the operating of the vehicle. And you don't want a battery by any means, starting to get torsion against it, which could create fires or unsafe conditions. And so you had to think about packaging that battery differently, and really using the space claim of where the engine used to be, and starting to package that battery that way. And then in our case, we put some saddlebags kind of where your steps are going into the cab. And so I think that was, concern number 1. And concern number 2 is, unfortunately, the way the battery industry is structured is it heavily favors automotive, because flat pack batteries are easy to design, easy to deliver, and every automotive company is more or less using the same design. So they get volume discount pricing. You show up as an ag company and you're like, hey, I got 4 tractors. I need 4 different designs for these battery packages, right? I've got different voltage requirements. Can I get it for the same price? And they kind of laugh at you. Oh, how many are you doing? Oh, only a couple thousand? No way, right? So it is a challenge. And we certainly saw it with Monarch and how they had to procure their supply chain as a key strategic partner of theirs. And we saw it with ours. That's something that we're actively trying to work and manage. And I think why you've seen, some companies, try to procure that supply chain, deeper, which we've also gone and done for our electric vehicles.
Marc, wanted to get into the buzzword of AI. It's kind of getting integrated into every single company of how they're going to leverage AI within their business. We've seen it on the agronomy space. We've heard companies like John Deere talking about it. Curious what CNH's approach to AI and how you use this new technology to advance everything that you're doing there.
It is probably one of my most favorite topics. And I think what I get super excited about is, AI and machine learning have been a part of our DNA for a long time. We've been using AI and I kind of qualify machine learning probably more so than I'd consider to be AI around a lot of our automation and tuning of the vehicles to serve the mission of the farmer. So take planting, for example, right? It's taking all the data off that planter, analyzing it in real time for the farmer so they can make adjustments on the fly. Or if you look at our combines and how we're adjusting the grind of the grain that might be going through and refining it so you can get to that zero loss harvest scenario that we talked about. Those are all AI on the edge. Certainly as we move more and more towards autonomy, we're using AI as a part of your object detection, your analysis to determine if something's a crop or a weed, and then being able to apply and react. And so if you think about Augmenta, it's taking a look at a plant, it's identifying its chlorophyll profile, it's determining, what kind of application and how much it needs to apply to address the needs of that plant at 20 miles an hour with only a couple meters between the camera and the spray boom, right? And then it's doing that spray boom that can be as long as 120 feet wide. And so AI is absolutely essential to allow the machine to act in milliseconds to be able to be effective for the farmer. As we think about generative AI, there's a couple areas that I get super excited about. I can't not be excited about what it does for the software engineer productivity. And so just being able to use tools to enable our software engineers right now to automate lots of rote tasks, test cases, test automation, CI/CD pipelines to our production environments. Beyond that, as we think about the customer, we're using it primarily for, shortcuts on knowledge. So now as a farmer, you could pull up a ChatGPT app, select your tractor and just simply ask, how do I change the filter? Or what is this error code, right? Or how do I check my tire pressure? And get an immediate response, right? And I've got 800-page PDF files that they used to have to sift through. And what they would do instead is just call the dealer. Hey man, I got this error code. What's going on? And so that tool is now being put in the hands of the farmers and within our service technicians that sit inside the dealer. And as you guys probably know, retaining a good service tech is really hard. And so nowadays with this kind of technology that we're introducing to our dealers is, any service tech can quickly query that information source, get it back. And not only will they get the answer back, they'll get the reference to the page in the manual where they can actually just click on it and pull up a diagram or, step-by-step instructions. And so, we are, I think it was Marc Andreessen who said software is eating the world. Well, AI is eating software.
Marc, what's your ag hot take? What's maybe a contrarian opinion you have within food and ag?
Most of my days are spent thinking about how to automate or add software to vehicles. There's two things that constantly go through my mind. And if you ever follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see some of these wonky posts about humanoid robots. Right. And if you think about it today, you've got major investments going in, I'd say primarily for core manufacturing lines, right? Is how do I solve that labor problem? Because there's not enough people going into assembly lines with robots. And I sit there and go, well, geez, if I've got a highly adaptive robot that has, the dexterity of a human hand, how hard is it to then train that robot to pick strawberries, to pick blueberries, to pick oranges, right? And being able to apply some of the technology that we have with Augmenta through that same humanoid. So now they can go out there and they can, while they're picking, potentially prepare the field for the next crop. The other one is I think at some point we hit a peak in horsepower. and we're actually going to go reverse ourselves. Whereas you have more and more connected capabilities on the farm, and you can have swarm-like activities with your vehicles, which we already are starting to do with our harvest cart automation, where the cart can auto sync to the combine, and you never have to worry about is your kid keeping up with you anymore. Those types of capabilities come to fruition. Now all of a sudden, maybe I can go down in horsepower because I can bring more field, more tractors to the field or more combines to the field to complete the same work. And all of a sudden, I don't have heavy vehicles traversing my land all the time and worrying about compaction. I can have maybe one lead driver on a combine, and I can daisy chain combines behind them, right? That are all operatorless. So those are some of the contrarian views as I think about it, which is odd as a guy who makes money selling equipment, right? As it really starts to shift of like, what does it mean to be an OEM over the next 100 years versus the last 100 years?
Marc, you're focused in all these exciting new areas. We've talked autonomy, we've talked AI. Your role is constantly looking around the corner for what's next. Where do you see kind of food and ag going over the next 4 or 5 years?
I think over the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to have two really big events happen. You're going to start to see the full autonomy of the farm cycle. And so you can have an operatorless tractor doing your tillage, a operatorless sprayer applying something to your crops, and you'll have an operatorless harvest capability, which changed the dynamic of where the farmer spends their time. And then you guys mentioned it, right? AI is going to then allow them to have insights to the data coming off their farm in ways they've never seen. And, a couple of years ago, I was sitting at a farmer's kitchen table, and he was walking me through the 5,000 variants he goes through every off season to determine his next season's planting plan, right? And that's a spreadsheet nightmare. All of a sudden, that's going to be automated with things like generative AI, where the farmer can now sit at the kitchen table, load in 10 years of yield data, 10 years of weather data, all of their inputs, so that the AI knows what inputs they're using, and say, design me based off of the farmer's almanac prediction of next year, the best planting plan based off of my field's average rain and average soil content makeup, right? And then it ideally spits it out. He clicks a button, it loads up to their autonomous tractor, and they're watching Netflix all day. And so I do think those things are within the next 5 to 10 year time horizon that's going to change farming practices that have been in place for generations.
A crazy time for sure. I'm super excited to follow this over the next decade as well, and we'll be following CNH closely during that time. Marc, as we finish up here, how can listeners get in touch and connect with you and everything CNH is doing?
Sure. The best place to get in touch with us would be, cnh.com. Follow us certainly on all your social channels that you've got out there, from Instagram to LinkedIn to TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn. It's easy for folks to just type in Marc Kermisch and find me. Love to engage with our customers and your listeners.
So Ty, what do you think?
Just awesome to dig into all these different areas. We were kind of rapid firing him with questions about all the buzzwords, all the hot topics. And I think just their approach to electrification was really fascinating to me as someone who's particularly interested in that space, how they're thinking about even like the hobby farmer versus the 1 million pound combine, right? And like how alternative fuels make sense in what use cases. So I really like and appreciated how he broke that down. Guys, thanks again for listening. We'll see you at World Agritech. If not, we will be doing a recap episode of our experience at Agritech, so you can feel like you joined us there. So thanks for listening, guys.